Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us, particularly for those of you who have been with us all day. This is our final session, and I'm here with your homegirl on the hill, Myeisha Hutchinson, and she's going to talk to you guys about not only the updates that we have legislatively, but also about advocacy on all levels of government, local, state, and federal, so we can make sure that our voices are heard by everybody that we pay taxes to. So, without further ado, Myeisha.
Hello, everyone. I'm joining you from the Hill by way of Alabama because I I am a district staffer. So I want to start out by saying there's really, as you all know, the House of Reps is on August recess. They did go back last for funding for the United States Postal Service. So I kind of start there because that was probably the last biggest legislative package literally passed last week. And what I'm going to be talking about, the four pieces of legislation are sitting in the Senate. They have passed the House of Representatives, but they are literally, it's what's called dead legislation. I'm my point of view, of course, is from a more progressive liberal point of view. So sorry if this sounds partisan. Um, so
But she's not actually sorry.
so I just no, I'm not really. So first of all, I want to talk about again the United States Postal Service package that was passed last week. It was HR 8015. It provided $25 billion worth of funding to the United States Postal Service. In the state of Alabama, we have 8,000 postal workers. Um, we all saw for 2, 3 weeks and still now leading up to that what was going on with our United States Postal Service. Mail sorting machines were being removed, but yet people were saying, and states were passing legislation where they were making it more accessible to do mail in voting, absentee voting, considering COVID. Okay. So this November, we will be still going to the poll with COVID. Okay. But yet we have a dead bill in the Senate. I'll back up a little further, go back a little further to last year because we're still talking about voting, right? Last year, the representative of Alabama's 7th Congressional District, Representative Terry Sewell, sponsored HR 4, which is a restorative act which would restore Voting Rights Act. As we all saw unfold, Shelby versus Holby, voting rights, the Section 4, which required pre-clearance, was completely stripped. Now, I've heard from the left and right saying, oh, well, what's so bad about having to show your ID? Don't most people have an ID? You would think. You would think. But still, that is evoking a poll tax. Because guess what? Your ID is not free. Whether you're a non driver or a driver, there is a cost associated with that ID. Whereas some people who live in public housing are provided with public housing ID. We also have Social Security. We have a number of other identifiers, military ID, a lot of IDs that are given to people totally free. So if you think that stripping pre-clearance is not a form of voter disenfranchisement, um, then I don't know what to tell you. Some other examples, some other examples of disenfranchisement, because that wasn't it. Our Native American community was also stripped of some things in North Dakota. So you think, oh, well, they've got IDs, most of them, all of them. Okay, yeah. But a lot of them don't have residential addresses who live on reservations. And so in that state, they created a law because they could, because pre-clearance was stripped away, that these people, Native Americans who lived on reservations, needed to have a physical address. Also, we saw unfold in 2018 voter rolls purged. How did we see that unfold? We saw Brian Kemp, Governor Kemp, running for governor in Georgia at the time was the Secretary of State and took it upon himself to purge over 50, well, hundreds of thousands of names, but then put 53,000 people on hold, of which 70% of those people were Black. Now, now if I do my math,
Amen.
that sounds like some disenfranchisement to me. So if you think it's not happening, it's not affecting you, what does that mean? Because I got an ID and I can go to the poll and da da da, and everybody, all adults should have an ID and blah blah. I've heard every narrative there is. There was more to that bill than just an ID. This allowed states to do all kind of stuff. Stop early voting, limit early voting. Let's take Ohio. Vice President Kemp was the governor. What did he do? He closed early voting in a lot of cities. And, no, I won't say that. He made it so where early voting was only available at one polling site. Now, for some counties in Ohio, that really didn't matter. But heavily populated counties like where Cincinnati, Cleveland are, that's a major blow to African Americans and minorities and people of color who typically historically represents large percentages of people who early vote. So that's all I'm gonna talk about HR 4. Again, it's sitting with the Senate, just like the United States Postal Service bill, just like the HEROES Act. Everyone keeps talking about, oh, where's my other stimulus? It's in the HEROES Act, along with $1.3 trillion worth of funding sitting with the Senate. This week, we're at week 15 of them not voting on the HEROES Act or any type of coronavirus relief, emergency relief, which will, of course, will go to agencies, which will go to states. Lastly, kind of want to talk about justice and policing. We know that was dead on arrival, and dead on arrival, not even a chance. Didn't even hold a chance. Because of course the Senate introduced its own bill by Representative Tim Scott in South Carolina. He presented his own bill, which did not have some of the legislation that came out of the House. The main registration being that registration tool that would actually track police officers, sheriffs that had been in disqualifying situations that were maybe they were fired from their previous employer. Just like you and I go through a background check, they should have those same things in place. Wanted to briefly touch on those four dead bills that could really be revolutionary to legislation. Because when we think about social change and we think about um, racial, systemic racism, it really starts at legislation. And some of the legislation that was put in place um, before African Americans were considered whole people. Yeah, I'll just slide that on in there. So that's kind of what we're working with as far as legislation. Um, and just kind of what's going on locally, as Birmingham residents and other suburban areas, we've seen, of course, local municipality elections play out. Uh, I think one important factor that we need to be talking about, especially in Birmingham, is looking at that budget, following that budget. I know Carmen Mays is our local budget expert.
Girl,
And
I've been trying to tell folks
we
for
are,
years.
and in this city, we are looking at about a $63 million deficit. So, of course, the Big Ten cities in Birmingham put out a letter to our federal legislation delegation asking them, for this relief. And some of this relief is found in the CARES Act, which would supplement the revenue that's lost. So what does that look like, right? When we looked at a $63 million deficit, who's going to be impacted? Impoverished people mainly are going to be impacted by that $63 million deficit. What does it look like? It looks like some nonprofits, who have been line items for years, being cut. You know, It's looking like employees being furloughed. And look, these are hard decisions. Nobody's gonna put it out there that this was, that this budget is easy peasy, and that our elected officials, and including our council, because ultimately the budget is presented by the mayor to the council. They have to vote on it, on the recommendations. And so now we're in a back and forth. So now we have several organizations around the city who are delving, and these are mainly civic-led organizations who are looking into the budget. I'm gonna pause there. Now, Miss Mays,
Yes.
what's your thought on this local government? Because I try to stay high in the sky with my federal obligations, knowing that they're fighting until November 3rd, and I just don't know what's gonna get done. Okay, I don't know what's gonna get done.
Well, let's see. I think that we know that economies are cyclical, and that while none of us could have foreseen coronavirus, like that was not anywhere like on my 2020. We do know that it's been about 10 years since our last recession. So knowing that economies are cyclical, knowing that recessions didn't occur on a cyclical basis, you would hope one would be thinking about that as we have been riding a little high in the cotton, that we may need to be putting an extra back, all these good years. So when we would have times like these, we would have something to fall back on. And, Mayor Arrington created the Birmingham Fund with the controversial liquidation of some of the waterworks assets to be a fund for Birmingham to kind of dip into. Did you just turn your video off?
No. Am I still here?
I don't know. It's like your face just went. I thought that was a reaction to that statement, but maybe not. That's cool. But no, you're not back. I don't know. Like, y'all let us know if you can see her face, because I can't see her face anymore. But so we did have things like the Birmingham Fund to kind of be that rainy day fund, to save one of our savings accounts, if you will. And there's other things like the fund balance, which is okay. Well, they can see you. That's all that matters. There's also the fund balance that that all local governments have, suggests that actually kind of also functions as a savings account. And most local governments have a policy about how much of the budget, the annual budget or multi-year budget, they can actually pull to meet their fiduciary obligations. I don't know if the city of Birmingham has such a policy or not. But usually, like other cities or counties I've worked for, there's like a 10 to 15% threshold, like no more than 10 to 15% of our municipal budget can come from our savings account. So I mean, like like I said, while everybody was caught off guard by this, and there were some unexpected expenditures, knowing that economies are cyclical, it's very important to keep in your mind. When you're coming up with all these new programs and things, it's important to remember that at some point, as we have gone up, we must come down. And whether it's through a pandemic or just through I don't want to use the word natural, because there's nothing natural about the United States economy. It's very exploitative and discriminatory. But the cycle, that is, it would have been nice if, someone would have been thinking about that and making sure that we had some sort of cushion, so that even if we did have a deficit, it wouldn't be this deep. But this is not the first time the city of Birmingham has been in a deficit. If some of you were around a few days ago, one of them, got arrested. So upon his departure, did leave the city of Birmingham in a deficit, and we were able to get out of it. So I think that it's a great time for creativity and innovation in government. I think it's also, I know this is an unpopular statement. We have to look at the size of our government and make things more efficient by introducing technology and reassessing processes. So have some process improvement. Maybe like you can't just have a job answering the phone. Like you have to answer the phone and then do other stuff.
But child, that's at every level. That's at the federal
Yeah, it's
level.
like,
That's
listen,
at the state
people gonna have to
level.
be multifaceted and multi-skilled to hold these positions because the I think for the city and a lot of municipalities, 60 to 70% of the budget is personnel. And so that only leaves 30 or so percent for everything from non-capital projects like, street paving, smaller scale street paving, to programs for the community, to paper clips. Like like all of that stuff has to be funded with that little 30%. And so if you want a municipal budget that actually gives you more bang for your buck, a lot of that also comes with reducing the size of the workforce.
Now,
And I know that's a difficult discussion to have because
it
that means
absolutely
somebody's
is.
losing their job.
Now
But
there's a group of people that always talks about draining the swamp, right? A group of people. We'll call them a
yeah.
group of people. But if we get to the meat of that, they are talking about some of the wasteful spending that happens, and some of the big budgets, of course, that's due to personnel and things like that that in a lot of ways can be condensed. And again, this is at all levels. We're talking about federal, state, county, local. Okay, all levels right now. But I think it's also reflective that our Big Ten cities sent, communication to the federal delegation to do something. And this is not just, just for Alabama. I'll say that CNN, MSNBC, Fox, you can turn on any major news outlet and you've got a mayor or a governor talking about what the federal government can do to help the revenue deficit. I just think off the top of my hand, a couple of places that closed here in Birmingham. Some not so much COVID related, somewhat bigotry related, but still, we're talking about revenue loss. And, there's a certain amount of revenue that the city gets from McDonald's, Burger King, fast food places. And just think, we're all at home, not spending that money. We're using, other sources, to maybe get our groceries delivered. Now, the grocery stores are booming. Grocery stores hiring.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The people
Like,
gotta
I
eat.
mean,
But
it,
to recoup some of that tax, those sales tax, and even some of that business tax, that's why it's so important to have a robust local entrepreneurship program and ecosystem. Because people will shop with the folks they know. I have no attachment to a chain, to Logan's or to Chili's or to Applebee's.
come
But
on
if
now,
I know
you love them rolls and butter. Come on now, Carmen.
I am. But if I know my homegirl is baking, then it's like, well, when it's time to get my nephew's cake for his birthday, it's like, well, let me call her instead of going to trying to, fight the Publix or going down to Walmart to get cake. When you know this, the people in your community that you're supporting, you are more directed with your dollars. Like I
Right.
know Jay, so let me go down here and get some Jay's wings because I want to support Jay, as opposed to going to Buffalo Wild Wings because I don't know them. And so
Absolutely.
that's why in times like very, very important to have that robust ecosystem so people can enter. Just think about all the innovation that has come out of COVID, all the things that have been invented, that have been brought online. We should be participating in that, particularly Black folks, particularly local folks. Like how, all these businesses that could have been started during this time that didn't get the resources that they needed because the resources weren't there because Applebee's had to close. And so, like,
And right, right.
yeah,
Capitalism
so
does not support entrepreneurship. That's just, that's just the way of the
I'm
world.
still waiting on Green Acres to get back to their regular scheduled hours. I'm
Well,
like,
one of them in the county has closed. The other location that was in Irondale is closed. Um, just these, these little institutions, and I think, well, they could have been doing call in, and it's that innovation that they probably needed to, be a part of one of these delivery services or things like that, and understand that they can actually do curbside delivery. Like people could, you know, come in or, come to the window. I mean, there was a lot of mechanisms.
It would have been nice, right? That if somebody from some agency actually would have put together a program specifically targeting Black and other people of color businesses with innovation programs. This is how you can still make a living during COVID. That would have been nice. It would have been nice to see somebody, anybody, making them 6 figures, them high 5-figure jobs. Anybody come out that building and get on their feet and go door to door and say, hey, this is a platform you can use to sell your goods online. This is how we gonna help fund this transition.
But that shows the disconnect in larger government entities, corporate entities that really don't understand grassroots organizing, because they don't really have the relationships to go knock on the door.
You're right.
Knock on the door. They just lack that simplicity of relationship building. And we want to talk a little bit about advocacy and what you can be doing for yourself during this time. I guess some of the tools that, I also have a LLC, MDH Strategies. We're going to be focused mainly on community-based asset building. What's already in the community, what Carmen is essentially talking about, where you can create a community engagement plan, a community development plan based on the gifts, the tools that are already in the community. Now we know the venture capitalists, we know the capitalists have the money and they want to come into the communities, but the work is not sustainable because it's not, again, the simplicity of is not inclusive of the community, because it's not tapping into the gifts that are already there. It's more of the same, bringing in, stuff and ideas and people from people and organizations who have no roots in the community. I think it's important that you understand you can be an advocate in your own way of when people are coming around saying, hey, we want to do something for your community. Well, Johnny down the street work on cars in front of his house, and it's a couple of abandoned buildings. He may need some help getting his LLC proper certification in a building where he can work out of. Nobody
instead of giving Johnny a ticket for fixing on his car in front of the yard.
Correct, because Mr. Johnny probably do good work. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's the wonderful. I mean, any industrial cities. You think about Birmingham, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, all these essentially Rust Belt cities. I would say Birmingham is a Rust Belt city in the South. So all of these places are highly tactile, highly technical. These people, like the things that people can do with their hands here in Birmingham and other cities like that is just amazing. And so, it's been my dream and my goal with Elevators and other people is to, advocate and create opportunities that these people can bring their skills to market. Like, that's just it. Some of the best seamstresses, some of the best cooks, some of the best mechanics, just like the general engineering brain of like older Black men is like one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed.
And you ask yourself, how can government help, right? How can government at a high level, the federal government, small business administration, how can they help? Well, so many Black folks, minority-owned businesses missed out on, some of the loans, forgivable loans that were given out through the SBA. Simply a couple of things. In some cases, they didn't have the paperwork.
Yep.
Some cases, again, they did not properly file taxes. Showed zero income made. It's a lot of the tricks of the trade. These advice that's just been passed down from Pawpaw now. Oh no, you don't want to show a profit. Put zero on there. but you
Mhm.
missed out on so much, and that's at a very high level, right? And some of that was, intentional. Large, our larger banks, which we bank with, um, small business entrepreneurs, people in gig economy, they were completely left out of that. The small banks did so much for people, and I'm glad that they were spotlighted during this process for the success stories that they have. Okay, that's at a very high level. What can the SBA do? Small Business Association. What is considered a small business? Even some of the legislation and some of the policies inside of that of what's considered a small business, and how even you're placed against a business with 500 employees, and maybe you're one person, right, and you're competing against them, right? It's just so many things that could be done, right, in at the more local level, creating programming like you talked about, to go door to door, have relationship with people, and really building a directory, and again, knowing the assets that are already in the community.
Mhm.
It's so much unknown. We talk about the
Subsidizing.
Third Avenue Business District.
Yeah. I mean, even like substance. So, like, I have a bookkeeper, but for people who are just starting out, or for other people who can't, like, subsidizing back office services,
Mhm.
contracting with, the same law firms that clear the land out, out the land bank can also do law audits for qualifying small businesses. Um, you know, working with other people who do taxes or bookkeeping, subsidize those services so they're more accessible to people. So the next time, some come around, folks had a paperwork together. Teaching good habits around, document keeping. And this goes back to the previous session about cybersecurity, which I encourage everyone to rewatch when we load the video. But and making sure that they have proper security, proper document keeping information. How many years do you have to keep up with things? Where should you store things? Having things in a fire safe box, having things backed up to the cloud. Like, there is, like, business now, with the way technology is and how much smaller the world has become due to the internet, um, and globalization. Like, it's not exactly the same. Like, there are some things that still hold true, but there are just things now that you have to think about, security wise, and even like insurance. Nobody knows what's covered anymore, particularly with COVID.
Oh
A
yeah, and then
lot,
you go to the doctor and you like, what? Like,
right.
I've
So
been
from a
getting this for
personal side,
years and not
you
reading
jacked
your
up
policies. Yeah.
you jacked up on the commercial side because you don't because it's never been really well, it couldn't have been clear because this didn't exist, last year this time. Well, not in humans, but it's like, there was a case in Broward County where an company would pay out, I think it was an accidental death and dismemberment claim, to one of the sheriff's deputies because he died from COVID related illnesses. And they was like, well, that doesn't count. And so, like, there's so much work to be done, legislatively, particularly on the state level where your insurance commissions are, around, like, what's actually covered. Like, if for an individual, for the people who are having side effects from COVID, whether it's the heart disease, other organ failure, anything else that's happening to them, you know, the threat to ACA and pre what is it called?
Pre-existing
Pre-existing
conditions.
conditions. That, that's a problem because if you
And
even
I,
if
I
COVID,
want everybody to know our president is in court right now, continuing to try to dismantle ACA, but has commercials out saying that how he is working to fight the high cost of prescription drugs. Now, how you gonna do that if people don't have access to healthcare?
well,
I'm
it
just,
don't matter.
I'm,
You
I'm
won't
real.
have no drugs. It won't matter because you won't have no drugs because won't nobody be able to prescribe you none. So it's you won't know if you find it or not. So I mean, because you won't have them, but you will
So what?
have a heart condition from surviving COVID though.
Absolutely. So understanding again, session the session starts back after Labor Day for members of Congress, and understanding they are trying to get a lot for November 3rd, but at the same time, they're not trying to rattle things up too much because everybody wants to win the election on November 3rd. Whether we're talking about the high level seat of the White House, or we're talking about the seats on the congressional level, some of them are in very heated, close races. You're going to see not a lot getting done. Of course, you're in a blackout period. It's not a lot that members of Congress can do to actually touch their constituents like they were before the blackout period because of election. So, people are going to have to pay attention. So how can you do that? So at a local level, what does advocacy look like? First of all, it's just kind of understanding basic civics of who does what at a federal, a state, and a local level. Normally federal members of Congress don't get involved with unemployment. But there was a temporary influx put in by the federal government for assistance for those experiencing unemployment due to COVID. So there were many calls made. Of course, we saw that, and we're still seeing our Department of Labor here in Alabama struggle with that. But knowing how to advocate for yourself in those situations, knowing that your member of Congress is not the person to call about a pothole, okay? But we can tell you that there was some federal money given to the state of Alabama to fix infrastructure roads, which was then divvied out to cities and counties. So it's very important if you're going to advocate for yourself, if you're going to advocate for your community, to understand where the money's going, how it's distributed, who got the money, and who to call. In case in point, I had a call, let's see, the other week, example of a constituent calling about an issue, really nothing to do with the federal government, and me just going online, just trying to tell them, hey, I think you should call your county commissioner. And then from there, you should work with them, especially if you live in an unincorporated area of the county that's not under a traditional municipality. But that's hard for folks to understand, right? That's a lot. It's a lot of work. Even to be an advocate is a lot of work. Your mother serves as the neighborhood association president.
Yep.
She's more knowledgeable to anybody. I've served in that capacity. But even then, you sometimes get to run around. Oh, I'm working with my counselor, but then finding out, oh, your counselor really can't tell different departments what to do because that's not how our government is set up in Birmingham, right?
And if
You
your
have to go
counselor
to
don't get along with the mayor, then any request that they send to the mayor's office don't get forwarded.
everything gets
So
lost. Everybody
everything
keep
be
your
lost.
memos, keep your emails, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important that people understand the power structure, and that does come with popular education. It comes with civic education, and then once you get that, you can understand the power analysis of who has the power and how do we fight these systems to really help people and change these systems, right? Because as I tell people all the time, I'm really not planning on moving out of this country unless some fabulous opportunity comes available.
I ain't
But
went right back.
so I'm just saying, I gotta work it. I gotta work this system because I'm here. I'm here now, Jesus. I'm not going
I think
anywhere.
it's also important to understand that like some psychology components behind it. Like it's very easy to yell at an abstract person. Like people have a lot of vitriol for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris or Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Is it
That's
Mike?
right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's right.
Mike Pence. Um, but when it comes to people who are more accessible to you, I think that the idea of confronting somebody that you can see is a little bit more jarring to people. But I always tell the revolution that you want is in your city hall is in your county courthouse, is in your state legislature. The people that you can
It's
actually
local.
physically touch, that's where the things that you yelled at the president and presidential candidates about, that's where that stuff is. And so we have to get more comfortable about holding our neighbors accountable. Period.
And,
Like,
and yes, we see these people at the grocery store. We see them, all the time because again, they're residents of the community. So it can like, oh gosh, I don't want to say anything. You can, I'm gonna see him. I don't want to be talking.
To the Med City Classic now,
Well,
and it's gonna be in the spring.
I'll tell you what. I tell you what, a closed mouth don't get fed.
That's right. But I will say this: if there's a candidate or a person that holds office that cannot separate their position from themselves and receive criticism, or what have you from citizens, and equally take them all into consideration and act on them without them themselves as people internalizing that information and then acting poorly because of it, then we got problems. And
Carmen, that's at every industry.
Yeah, that's at the grocery store, at the hair salon, at the city hall, at the White House.
Right. And it's always internalized. And it is very hard. That's a whole psyche of how do you get to that place of really kind of listening, honing in on your constituents, and blocking out. I mean, people call my 9-to-5 job all day who are not constituents, who have a lot to say. And it's like, are we gonna internalize that, or are we gonna really listen to the constituent who's got a real grievance and something that we've got to do something about because they live in the district? So I don't know if anyone had questions at this point.
Yeah. Y'all got questions, comments? I've seen a few people typing that $1,200 was gone. So as soon as it went in, it went in and out. It was like, girl, you couldn't do nothing with.
Think how hard it was to even get to that $1,200 number. A lot of them didn't want that. Some of them wanted less. Some of them feel like people were just being given free money, and in a lot of places, $1,200 is not even enough to pay rent. So it wasn't even reflective. Right. It wasn't even reflective on the local needs of people. So again, that's why local matters. They came up with a $1,200 number, and people in California was like, well, that's half of my rent, or 1/4.
Right.
Of my rent.
They can get some water. Can't get no rent.
I didn't get some water. So I think all in all, I want to remind people, wash your hands, wear your mask, drink your water, oil your scalp, and learn what's going on the local level. Learn who your local elected officials are. Learn their not so much their platform, but how they have voted on issues. Call them about stuff. Make them respond to you. Again, you are the constituent, and you hold the power at the end of the day.
That's how this works.
Nobody understands how much power they have to make change. And a lot of times you see so much, everything, you see this March on Washington happening today, and people think, well, what's the purpose of that? Well, what was the purpose of it, of Martin Luther King doing it? It was really a labor movement, right? It was about money then. And it was about equity then, and it's still about
it's about money now.
Well, thanks for having me, Carmen.
Well, thank you for coming on. We could do this all day and night, but we're going to cut it here. Emails will be going out shortly. Following up for all the attendees. All the sessions were recorded, so we'll edit the videos and have them up on our YouTube page. Thank you so much for attending, and I will see y'all see y'all soon, hopefully in person. I do like want to mask up and see some of y'all. So stay tuned. We have an event coming up in September that we'll be able to do just that. Details are coming soon. So with that,
and kudos to elevators, kudos to females, kudos to being Black, and Carmen elevating the message in the gig economy. Kudos.
kudos. We're gonna
Thank
get
you,
in
Carmen.
trouble for some of these comments. I can't wait. But some folks with 205 or 404 in front of they say
Get in good trouble. Isn't that what Representative John Lewis told us?
That's what he said. He's not getting it, but we got to save ourselves. We cannot have a permanent underclass of labor in Birmingham because folks are not getting the proper education and opportunity to be entrepreneurs that other folks are getting. So
right.
that's just, I'm sorry, that's just the way it got to be. Thank y'all, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.